Hi everyone, welcome back to our first day of lessons after spring break. So like I said before spring break, we were going to get started on fourth quarter material. So one of the standards that we learn about in fourth quarter is time, telling time, elapsed time, and solving word problems with time. So what we're going to start doing is reviewing how to read a clock. This is something that you should have learned in second grade, but we're going to start off easy and understand how to read different types of clocks. So to get us started, our I can statement for day 16 is, I can tell time using an analog clock to the nearest 5 minutes. All right, our vocabulary for today's lesson: minute hand, hour, minute, quarter past, and half past. First, we're going to start off with a digital clock. All of us are comfortable with reading digital clocks. It's what we see in the classroom, at home. A digital clock gives you your hour first and then your minutes. So on this digital clock, it is 2:37. Today, we're going to spend more time practicing on an analog clock. So this is an analog clock. It has an hour hand and a minute hand. So let's talk about hour hand first. Our hour hand is our shorter hand. So it is this hand here because it is the shorter hand. It is what tells us what hour that we are in during the day. On an analog clock, there are 12 hours. So 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12 hours on a clock. Next, we have our minute hand. Our minute hand is the long hand. So in this one, or on this analog clock, it is this hand. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. When we are reading minutes on an analog clock, we count by fives. As you can see on this clock here, it has already done it for us. We start with 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and then back to 0. So this clock is currently reading 3 o'clock. You read your hour hand first and then your minute hand. So the hour hand is pointing to the 3 and your minute hand is on 0. So it is 3 o'clock. All right. We also need to talk about the difference between AM and PM. AM starts at 12 o'clock at night or midnight. You are usually, or most of us, should usually be sleeping at midnight. Think about on New Year's Eve. When the clock strikes 12 o'clock or midnight, it is now a new year. It has gone from PM to AM. AM starts at 12 at night or midnight and runs all the way until 11:59 in the morning. So usually during when you're at lunch. At 12 o'clock p.m. or at noon during lunch, that's when it becomes p.m. So during the a.m., people are usually sleeping. You're eating breakfast. You're at school. All of that good stuff. Most of us in third grade all go to lunch during the a.m. We go at 11:30 a.m. Then p.m. happens at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. So we're still at school. You usually are going home in the p.m. You're going to bed, eating dinner. All of this stuff happens in the afternoon. So remember, a.m. starts at midnight and goes all the way until lunchtime. And then at 12 o'clock or at lunchtime, that's when it becomes p.m. There are 12 hours in a.m. and 12 hours in p.m., making 24 hours in a day. All right, we're going to practice reading some digital clocks, or some analog clocks, excuse me. So I'm going to set a time here. Oops, not like that. I'm going to turn my clock. All right, so the first step that you do is you read the hour first. So remember, the hour hand is the shorter hand. In this clock, the hour hand is the red hand. If I were to extend it, I can see that it's not quite touching the 5, but it's not at the 6 yet. It's closer to the 5, so that means it is 5 o'clock. The next step that I'm going to do is read the minute hand. Remember, I'm going to count by 5s. 5, 10. The minute hand is at 10 minutes. So this clock is reading 5:10. All right, let's practice with another one. All right, the first step, step 1, is to read the hour. Remember, the hour hand is the shorter hand. I'm going to find my hour hand and I'm going to extend it. Now I can see that it has not touched the 3 yet. So if I were to hook it back, it's still at the 2. So it is 2 o'clock. Step 2 is to read the minutes. Remember, our minute hand is the long hand. So here we go. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. My minute hand is at 35 minutes, so the clock is reading 2:35. Let's practice another one. Oops, there it is. All right, here we go. The first step, read the hour hand. The hour hand is the shorter hand. If I were to extend my hour hand out, I can see that it's in between the 6 and the 7. Has the hour hand touched the 7th hour yet? No. So if I were to hook it back, it's at 6. And step 2 is to read the minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. This clock shows that it is 6:45. Okay. All right, let's read this clock. As we can see, there's 5 minutes in between each of our numbers. That's why we're counting by 5s. So if I were to put these 5s all the way around these 5 minutes, I can see that the space in between my numbers represents 5 minutes. All right, the first step is to read my hour hand. The hour hand is the shorter hand. In this clock, the shorter hand or the hour hand is pointing to the 10. So I know it is 10 o'clock. My next step is to read the minutes. My minute hand is the longer hand. This minute hand is pointing to 5 minutes. So I know this clock shows 10:05. All right. What happens if this is what my clock is showing? Step 1 is to read the hour hand. The hour hand is the short hand. It is pointing to the 11, so I know it is 11 o'clock. My minute hand is pointing to the 12, but we don't say 11:12. We don't say 11:60. We say 11 o'clock. It is at 0. What happens when my hour hand and my minute hand are both pointing to the 12? That means that it is 12 o'clock. When both of your hands, both of your hour hands and your minute hands are both pointing at the 12, it is 12 o'clock. What time is this clock showing? First of all, you read your hour hand. The hour hand is in between the 1 and the 2. It's after 1 o'clock, but it's not quite 2 o'clock yet. So it has not crossed that 2 o'clock hour. So it is still 1 o'clock. And let's read our minute hand second. I'm going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. This clock shows that it is 1:30. I'm going to show some examples, and I'm going to have you pause the video, record the time, and then we're going to check back in together, okay? So here is your first clock. Remember, for today's lesson, we're counting or we're finding time to the nearest 5 minutes, okay? All right, here's your clock. I want you to tell me what time this clock shows. Pause this video for just a second and record it and then check back. All right. So the first step is to read the hour hand, okay? So the hour hand is the shorter hand. Now this hour hand is super close to the 8, but if I were to extend it out, is it at the 8 yet? No, it hasn't touched that 8th hour. It hasn't crossed into 8 o'clock. If I were to hook it back, it's still in the 7th hour. It's still in 7 o'clock because it has not crossed 8 o'clock yet. So it is 7, and now I read my minute hand. My minute hand is pointing to 9, and when we count by 5s, that's 45 minutes. So it is 7:45. I'm going to give you 2 more examples to try by yourself to pause the video. Whenever you're ready, unpause and we'll solve together. All right, here is your next clock. Take a few minutes to solve and then unpause when you're ready to go over this one. All right, this is the second clock. Now, the first step is to read your hour hand. Remember, the hour hand is the shorter hand. This clock is so close, and it looks like it's touching the 5, but is it really? Has it really crossed or touched that 5th hour yet? No, it has not. So if I were to hook it back, it's still at the 4. And my next step is to read the minutes. So I'm going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. This clock shows that it is 4:50. Notice as you get closer to crossing into the next hour, your hour hand gets closer to the next hour. So let me show you. This shows 5 o'clock. Watch the hour hand as I move in to getting closer to the next hour. 5:25, 5:30, 5:35, 5:40. Notice how my hour hand, is moving closer to the 6, but it hasn't crossed it yet. 5:45, 5:50, 5:55. Notice how close it is to that 6, but it still hasn't crossed it. 6 o'clock. Do you notice or do you see how the hour hand is moving, but until it is that next hour, it does not cross into the next hour? So I'm going to show you again. This time, pay very close attention to the hour hand. So this clock is currently showing 6 o'clock. The hour hand is on the 6, see? And the minute hand is on the 12 or 0. All right, I'm going to turn the minute hands. We're going to count by 5, and I want you to watch that hour hand. 5, 10, 6:15, 6:20, 6:25, 6:30, 6:35, 6:40, 6:45, 6:50. Notice that hour hand's getting closer to the 7, but it's not 7 yet. 6:55, 7 o'clock. Now that hour hand is exactly on the 7. So the closer you get to it being a new hour, the closer that hand gets to the next hour. You have to make sure you're paying attention. All right, I'm going to give you one last clock. You can pause the video. When you are ready to solve, okay? All right, here is your next clock. Take a few minutes to solve. The first step is to read the hour hand. Many of us may have said that this clock reads 10:55. However, that is incorrect. Notice that the hour hand is not touching that 10 yet. It's almost touching, but it hasn't crossed into that next hour. So that hour hand hooks back to 9. The second step is to read the hour, so it is actually 9:55. This finishes the first day of reading a clock to the nearest 5 minutes. Make sure you're paying very close attention to see if your hour hand has touched that next hour, and if it has not, then it needs to fall back to the hour before. Remember, the hour hand is the shorter hand, the minute hand is the longer hand. There are going to be some problems in Power School for you to solve. You do not have to draw out the clock. You can just write the time below it. Make sure you take a picture of your work, send it to your teacher. If you need any help, feel free to reach out on Dojo or email. Have a great rest of your day.